Welcome back to the show, everyone. Craig and Jonah. A little hodgepodge today, but it's been a while since we spent a lot of time talking about masturbation. So figured it was,
It's long overdue.
yeah, I did a search the other day in like Apple Podcasts for the term, and we're slipping in the rankings.
Oh, really?
It's hurt me a little bit, so we're gonna
Who's
boost it.
discussing it more?
It's definitely not more, but they apparently think someone else's content is more quality, or if you have a big channel that talks about it once, they
Mm,
can out. So
so yeah, their
yeah.
one time makes up for our volume.
Yeah. And maybe there's quality there, but I think we have the quality too. But so we're boosting we're getting ourselves back up in our
If not the
prop.
firsthand experience, more than some of these other channels,
That's
maybe.
right. Yeah. You want it from the horse's mouth or not? Or do you want it from a priest who's only heard it through confession? Um, so bear with us if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, you may want to just turn it off now.
But click like before you go.
Yeah, like and subscribe. We're getting a lot of subscribers. It has helped that we've created controversy over on Twitter over our last guest, Thomas Palega, episode 186. So if you haven't checked that out, strongly encourage you to do that. Hit like that one. I did get a comment this morning on YouTube, and I can't tell, but the person claims to be a priest. It says
Okay.
Father. I'm not going to use the last name. But he says, "Why do you have a heretic on your podcast?" I assume I assume he's not referring to me or you.
Pelagia?
I imagine, yeah.
Oh,
I said, "Have you heard of Thomas Aquinas? You ever read the Summa? Do people know what the Summa is? The Summa is literally Thomas Aquinas considering and responding to every argument. He talks to Aristotle. Was Aristotle a heretic? I don't know. I mean, Aristotle wasn't a Catholic. It wasn't a Christian. Um, and so
yeah, that's where is it bad to talk to people about their viewpoints?
it's like,
Like, should you even think or
yeah,
consider them?
yeah, it's the Catholic version of wokeism. Like, if you want to just cancel it, talking to someone or having them on your show as an endorsement of their ideas, sorry, that's not our thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I also tweeted about this, and I said that, and so basically I said trads. Sorry, I pick on the trads, but it's a short. So it's easier than saying conservative Catholics because it takes up less Twitter characters. So don't take offense, trads, but I'm going to lump you all in together. Um, trads, why you have a heretic on your show, and me. Here's an open invitation to come on the podcast and explain why he's wrong, and then trads crickets. Like they did.
Yeah.
I have basically let anyone come on the show if they want to. No one
Just to
everyone.
discuss.
Yeah, we'll have a conversation with anyone, and we've had them.
Mm-hmm.
We've had guys on here that we weren't didn't necessarily agree with.
And that priest wouldn't come on the show. Did you ask him?
I haven't gotten that far. He hasn't told me if he knows who Thomas Aquinas is yet. I'm assuming he's heard of him. But that just drives me crazy. And yeah, I mean, I know that they'll say, "Oh, you're just unless you have the nice disclaimer, you're sort of sowing discord or whatever." I mean, so I did change the Twitter handle of the description. I says, "Do not take theological advice from us." So
Fair.
you're warned. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not endorsement, but if we can't have conversations with people, oh boy, I think we've strayed from the path a little bit of what makes Catholics great.
It's supposed to be universal, and
Yeah, we're
there's
we're we're supposed to be able to engage the world.
not sequester yourself and
Yeah.
hide.
So if that's your thing, if you want a show that only has people on that agree with you 110%, go find another podcast. This isn't it for you. Sorry. But make sure
But feel free to
but,
comment.
but don't unsubscribe, please. So anyway, so yeah, so poor Thomas, creating controversy over there. Um, but get so I've been really amping up for episode 200. I hope so. We gotta like pull it off now. but we got material coming in. If you're on Twitter, go over to Twitter and find us. I have a pinned tweet now. I'm asking for all of the best arguments against other acts. Like, give us all the scriptural reference, arguments, documents, whatever you got, because we're going to take on that issue on episode 200. And I've got some feelers out. I got tagged in a couple of tweets recently on some higher profile people that I would say are more on the conservative side of this issue, and see if they're willing to come on. Be fun to have Thomas on. Be fun to have Thomas and, let's say, someone from more of the traditional side. Maybe we could do a live show.
That'd be nice, yeah. It'd be
So
nice if we could all sit down in a room,
yeah,
you know.
I'd agree if they would agree.
Yeah.
Jonah's gonna have to have a paper bag over his head, though.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd make that work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd make it work.
We'll figure it out.
Yep.
So anyway, so I've been having a lot of Twitter's been kind of fun, because what I used to do is I'd send myself all these emails and notes, and I'd write all these notes, all these just random ideas I have. Now I just free float on Twitter, see what sticks. But I was so I've been getting a lot. I should say we, but since I manage the
you
email
manage it,
account and
yeah.
stuff, we've gotten some private messages from some guys that have shared some, all the same struggles, some worse than others. And I got some pushback from one guy who thinks that we're overly tolerant of masturbation, and doesn't like us talking about 2352 and in portraying it as a sort of a get out of jail free card.
Even though that's what it seems to be,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
read you judge for yourself. Like, if there's any 2352 experts out there want to come on the show, we quoted
somebody that wrote their PhD,
Yeah.
their dissertation on 2352.
We were meant for each other. This is what God is calling you to do. But and I get it. Like, I'm not, you and I, even off the record, we wonder, should we be more scrupulous? Should we be more worried about this stuff? I don't know. I'm just having discussions.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't write 2352. It's in the catechism, but no one wants. It's kind of like that crazy uncle that everyone knows is there, but no one really wants to talk about.
Does make you wonder who wrote it. Like,
yeah.
Which group of I suppose they were cardinals or priests, at least, I don't know, got together and wrote that.
Yeah, it'd be fun to find the scrivener who put that together. Imagine who got punished with that job. All right, Cardinal
maybe
Joe.
they volunteered for it.
Yeah. What would you guys like to write about? I'd like to write about masturbation in the catechism. Give me that job.
Give me that section.
Were they fighting over it, or are they drawing straws?
I don't know. I'm sure there was some interest there.
I wonder if they talked to people, like when Humanae Vitae came out, they had this whole panel, and that's part of the controversy, is there was a whole panel of people, laity and clerical alike, and including some non-Catholics, but like scientists and stuff. And the overwhelming majority of the panel felt that it was time to approve artificial birth control in certain circumstances. And of course, Humanae Vitae did not.
Mm-hmm.
Paul VI essentially vetoed the will of the board. Maybe that's the right call. I mean, but I don't know if they did anything similar. Did they pull all the masturbators?
Probably not all of them.
Probably. That'd be hard to do.
Yeah, and then how you classify it as a former or current.
Yeah.
Current, but not right now.
It's like an ad pops up when you visit porn sites. It's like, here. And
I don't know what you're talking about, Craig.
I mean, how do you find those people? Yeah. So anyway, we exchanged some messages about that, and I don't know what the answer is, but what I do know is that people get, depending on who you talk to and which priest you go to for spiritual direction and confession, you can get very different instructions on what to do here.
Mm-hmm.
One guy in particular, I asked him if I could share this little story, and he said that's fine. And he was he's an advocate of doing the 30, like a real hardcore like novena or fast, and um married guy, claims that he's cured of this issue um thanks to a really hard fast or whatever.
Okay.
And I said,
I
well,
say congratulations to him.
yeah, good luck. Um, and I said, well, has there been any slip ups or whatever? And the way he said is, well, I had one time that I started to, and then I stopped. I stopped before the gun went off. Went to confession, and the priest, just in case, and the priest said, oh yeah, that was definitely a mortal sin. Good thing you came here. And
I have a tough time. I don't know, and maybe the priest did ask him about his free will and full knowledge and all that, but I don't know how you judge that in the confessional like that.
well, I mean, I mean, probably the way this guy describes it may have been more like, he may describe it more different than I would. I mean, if he was so hard set on like stopping it,
Mm-hmm.
maybe he went in and was, just gave all the signs of remorse and whatever to give the priest the cue that this was thing. Again, I'm not saying it's not, but
Yep.
I mean, there are.
So you have two kinds of priests there in that situation.
Yeah.
One priest will say, force a habit, it's a venial sin, you can still go to communion. Whereas the other, like that kind of priest would say, mortal sin, you're lucky you didn't go to hell for that.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you could, I don't know what the answer is. And
Yes.
there's just it's such a wide ranging, possibility of answers there. And if you trust the more conservative priest, I think you could be pushed to despair.
Well, and you know who the priests are. So do you
Yeah.
mentally, do you go? I mean,
I don't know.
I got another message from a guy who basically said, yeah, the last time was the priest says, will you stop coming back every time you masturbate?
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Ah! That's really funny. So what does that mean then? Like what kind of guidance is that?
Maybe.
That means it's like venial? Because or it's a mortal sin, but I'm not gonna give you absolution.
Of my pay grade. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe it's so let's I want to talk about this particular.
Boy, that's really funny.
Yeah. So the letter of the law is that masturbation, C-2352, says, it's an intrinsically evil act. Okay.
Okay.
Intrinsically evil means it can never be done under any circumstances, regardless of the purpose or intention.
Okay.
There aren't a lot of intrinsic evils. Okay. And even the ones that are listed as intrinsic evils, I would say are, what I would say, a little grayer. For example, killing another human being is not an intrinsic evil, but murder is. So the definition of murder is basically killing an innocent, without like a just reason to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
adultery is intrinsically evil, but again, they're like, it depends how you look at it, because you could say, well, sex is not intrinsically evil. It depends on the circumstance of when you're having sex, right? Right.
Yeah.
Like it depends on the circumstances, whether so I tend to think that masturbation gets lumped in this intrinsic evil just because it's such a nicely well-defined little occurrence. But what if it would seem very easy to me to remove the intrinsic evil label and just say depends on the circumstance. Kind of like with eating or alcohol or whatever. Like there may be, like, is there never a circumstance where it's okay?
Because I get it too, where if your spouse came to you and asked if, tonight would be a good night for it, and you said, nope, I'm gonna go take care of myself.
Yeah,
You're on your own.
yeah,
That's totally different
yeah,
thing.
yeah. It just seems to me there's so many different circumstances where it can happen that it's hard for me to understand why it falls into the category of intrinsic evil. Not whether it can be wrong in some
Hmm.
situations, but why
Yep.
is it intrinsically evil? Like in someone, I wish I could pull up the tweet.
And,
Well, it just said, isn't it odd that you can, what does it say? It's not intrinsically evil to end a human life, but it is to delay a human life, or whatever.
yeah.
I think it was a bishop that said that or something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Intrinsically evil acts, you would think would be something to be well defined from the beginning, or something that everybody would understand.
Hmm.
Whereas this is a much cloudier issue, and it kind of goes back to one of the comments we got in our YouTube video earlier, where, I was just asking about whether Jesus handed down these teachings at that moment, and so I was reading a little more about whether or not any of the apostles were married. And Peter was married.
Hmm.
They mentioned his mother-in-law in the Bible somewhere. I don't have the verse right in front of me, but so it's just interesting to think that Peter was married, and he was obviously having sex, I'm sure. And you just don't know what that was like for them back then. Like how that all worked out, and how it was okay, and how, if there was solo activity, how that was viewed. I don't know, because it wasn't a sin officially until like 1,000 years later.
Well, it's interesting because the other day, again back on Twitter, I was in a bit of a, we'll just call it a conversation to be nice about it. Um, about these issues, and the person kept saying the model for us for chastity is Saint Joseph. That's what the us men that are struggling to be chaste should model our lives after. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, the guy was a virgin.
We don't do we know that?
I think we're.
He could he have been a widower or something like that? And because some people say he was an old man.
I think it. Well, I think his. I think the narrative is that that he was a virgin.
Okay.
Certainly was never had sex with Mary. Mary was a virgin. Mary was born without original sin. Jesus, of course, is perfect and only child. I mean, I just don't know what Joseph's struggles really were like. I mean, he's living in the presence of Jesus. Wouldn't some of that grace?
I'm sure it would. I mean,
I mean, I would be much more interested in knowing how Saint Peter became a saint,
being married and all.
being married. I mean, it doesn't say that they all became cousins after Jesus' ministry.
Hmm. And what his wife would say about him.
Yeah,
Like,
I would. Yeah. So to me, that's a much more relatable situation. And what did Peter? What was his life like? What were his struggles with chastity? Because that to me, I mean, I love Saint Joseph. This is in no way demeaning Saint Joseph, but
absolutely.
I just don't find that to be a real helpful way of trying to manage my own life and be chaste as a man who's got a bunch of kids and is fallen and lives in a world of cell phones and stuff like that. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, and how, yeah, just as far as the story of Mary and Joseph, how they knew they were never supposed to have sex, even though sex is supposed to be a good and holy thing. I don't understand that part of it. Like, and I'm sure somebody has an explanation somewhere, but I just don't know how that was relayed to him, and how he was like, okay, and how he fully understood that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of something else I tweeted about. Is Do you know what Gnosticism is?
Yeah, like the belief you're open to open thinking, like open to all thinking, or open to all
Maybe
thoughts.
I got the wrong heresy, but I think Gnosticism, Andy, you'll have to find that. So Andy, if you hear me talk about Andy, we have a helper in the background. So Andy is the one that's helping this content um look better and make sure the links get in there. But so
Oh,
Gnosticism,
it's a prominent heretical movement in the second century Christian church, Gnostic doctrine taught that the world was created and ruled by a lesser divinity, and that Christ was an emissary of the remote supreme divine being.
And the basic punchline in Gnosticism is that the spirit is good and the body is evil. Like it's sort of that
Oh,
dichotomy.
okay.
Um, and you know, this kind of relates to, I think, something we talked about in the last episode in my little skirmish with the TOB type people. What a husband's approach to his wife is supposed to be, and what kind of state of mind he's supposed to have about her when he's requesting intimacy. And the impression I'm getting from a lot of TOB, theology of the body folks, is that you need to be seeking and having intimacy with a desire for your wife as a person, and not be sort of tainted by the carnal desires, not seeking sex for sexual release, or the pleasure itself, but more so for the unity with her, which, okay.
Sure.
But it feels a little bit like that Gnosticism. Like, what am I supposed to do with the bodily desires that we have? Are they all bad? Are they all just tainted by original sin? I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, I think that's a bit much.
I think,
Because it's like, so in the modern world, we all enjoy food, but if you have dessert, is that a mortal sin?
yeah,
Because you're not doing it for the nutrition, you're doing it for pure pleasure,
yeah,
like
mhm,
99.9% of the time.
yeah.
So does that make it a mortal sin?
Well, it doesn't make it bad. Yeah, like, is it, if you cook a hamburger and you add ketchup and mustard and condiments to make it taste better, and salt on your French fries to make it taste
Hmm.
better, does that make that wrong? Like, it just,
Because the salt is bad for you,
yeah,
technically.
yeah,
The ketchup is bad for
yeah,
you because of the sugar.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you can get as scrupulous as you want.
yeah. And I get it. Sex is a serious matter, but again, they're they're claiming that sex is good. Like, they like to say it's this sacramental experience and it's communion with God, which, fine, great. Like, I don't have
Hmm.
a problem with that. And they try to say that the body isn't bad and that sex is good, because I think historically sex was kind of treated as just this icky thing, kind of the Gnosticism, like it's so they try to elevate that. They try to just try to respond to that, but at the same time they just kind of, they always resort back to the parts of the flesh that we don't like or can't control. We just attribute bad motives to that's the devil or whatever tempting you, and I don't know, maybe it
Yeah.
is. Uh, So I don't know. I I just think, I think people too easily disregard what our bodies seem to be designed to do. Doesn't mean you just follow every impulse, but I think
Hmm.
there's a difference between following every impulse and also treating every impulse as if it's, a temptation of the devil or whatever. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, like I mean, you said with whether or not solo activity is always, intrinsically evil.
Hmm.
You know, there's a difference between, you know, watching pornography and thinking about your wife, I guess, or not thinking about anything.
Hmm.
Because they would say that, you know, solo activity is prohibited based on Jesus saying whoever looks at a
Hmm.
woman with lust
Hmm.
is,
Hmm.
risking eternal hell.
Hmm.
But I don't know if you're thinking about your wife, they might say that then you're getting into some sort of like Back to the Future 2 metaphysics sort of situation where the wife that you're thinking of isn't real. You're not thinking actually about your wife, you're thinking about this other wife along an alternate timeline. And I just don't know if that's true or not.
Or you can still commit lust against your wife, which, ooh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that line is at. It
Yeah,
just,
and I think if you get that deep, nobody makes it out alive. Or you could fall into despair quite easily, which we should all be just praying, trusting in the mercy of God, and going to confession. And you got nothing to worry about, I think.
well, it seems to me that purgatory is packed full of men who either masturbated too much without giving it due consideration, or spent too much time being scrupulous about it and falling into despair and not trusting in God's mercy.
Yeah.
I think one of
Maybe
those.
more of the despair.
I think one of those is going to be true. I'm just not sure which one it is.
I would say the despair might be worse. Just trust in the mercy of God and go to confession.
Well, yeah, it's sort of like the guy that, because I said, well, what about 2352? He's like, oh, I'm not taking any chances with like, and I'm like,
So you don't trust the catechism.
well, that's just it. I'm like, I don't know. I mean,
You can always be the good thief, I think, and just trust in God's mercy.
I don't think you have to be holier than the church.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to see so many messages coming our way, or people on Twitter, whatever, comments that are appreciating the conversations that we're having, because it's everywhere. Like everyone deals with this in some degree or another, and we're just trying to like make it a little easier to talk about and wrestle with, and
Just have the conversation.
have the
Because this is kind
conversation.
of a hidden conversation. Like it happens, but not in the open. And not a lot of people want to acknowledge it.
Yeah. Um, most of us don't want to talk about this with our wives. I tend to think for most men, if you've had any kind of problem with this in the past, I think it's going to be really difficult to really completely overcome without some awareness of your wife, what's going on. I mean, maybe. Um, but so I want to make this one point. This is something I really wanted to talk about for a while, on this whole sort of masturbation issue, and what we should do about it. What should be our approach to it? Um, because the approach that I sort of suggest runs a little bit afoul of this intrinsic evil issue, which is like it's always wrong. But I think most guys can reduce masturbation to a very infrequent problem with a reasonably good married life or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, I think for most guys to say it would never ever happen again. If your goal success to you means it never ever happens, I think you're probably going to be disappointed a lot. Whereas if your goal is to let's reduce this to a very very infrequent problem, I think for a lot of guys that's manageable. Are you familiar with the term diminishing return?
Hmm.
Um, so it reminds me of people, let's say, not to get too political about this, but people that have strong feelings about climate change, right?
Hmm.
There are people that feel like we got to be carbon neutral. Like you got to like eliminate all carbon for your life, or be neutral about it. And any amount of net carbon is bad. And I think for most people that's not realistic. Like I think it's possible. Like I think if you're willing to live a very different life and endure a lot of hardships and devote a lot of time and energy to that, you could theoretically
You can do
become
it.
carbon neutral. But the amount of sort of money or input or sacrifice it takes to let's say, to eliminate the first 50%
Hmm.
is far easier, far more economical than the last 5%, right?
Yep.
That's with any kind of pollution thing. That's what
Hmm.
they always say. The closer you get to eliminating a problem, the less return you get on your investment, the more effort you got to put towards that, right?
Hmm.
And I think for guys, especially guys that are I think with a minimal amount of effort and some discipline and improvement in your relationship with your wife, you can take this problem and really reduce the occurrence,
Make it manageable.
make it much more manageable. And that's okay. Now, what do we do about this? But if you're focused on eradicating the last 5%, you are going to be giving a tremendous amount of your mental and spiritual effort towards that. I
That's
I
a fair
want
point.
I kind of wonder if we aren't distracted by that, because as long as you're spending all your energy just making sure that you don't you know violate 2352 at night, you're number one, you're not spending that time dealing with other vices in your life, and you're also not spending time promoting virtue. Like,
So it could be the great distraction,
I,
you
I
know, where you're
wonder.
focusing on this, whereas you really have bigger issues in your life, but this is just the one that is most apparent to you.
Yeah, I mean, is reducing the last 5% more important or more valuable to you than, let's say, really just cutting out a lot of these other vices you have in your life and promoting virtue in other areas? I don't know.
It's like the master bait and switch.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I just, the only thing I'll say about it is this. There, we've had guys on here that have talked about, doing the 30-day novena and
Fasting.
more or less felt liberated from this. And this guy that I was referencing earlier basically said, 30-day fast, he's all but.
For now.
Yeah, but for now. And I'm not discounting that, and maybe for some guys that works, but let me offer a possible theory or explanation for that. I think, well, this is not like there's a spiritual component to this. I think the spiritual component to this issue is far smaller than most people want to make it out.
I would agree with that as well.
I think it's a lot of circumstance in your life, age, habits, your relationship. Like, I think all of that plays a much bigger role in how much of a problem this is for guys than whether you're praying and fasting hard enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, because if you have the right amount of intimacy, it can just go away.
Yeah. But I was reading recently about, you've heard of the sort of the whole prosperity gospel approach to life.
Yep, Joel Osteen.
Yeah. And there are, and people that are part of that statistically do better financially than the average person. And some have asked why that is. Is there in fact a connection between believing that the Lord will, benefit you financially if you see that as God's way of blessing you? And someone made the point that so much of what we do is about mindset. And if you believe that you are very often a product of what you believe will happen, positive or negative. And those that have belief, like genuine belief that positive things are going to happen, tend to have a better chance of those positive things happening. Does the guy or gal, but let's say the guy that pours all his energy into an extended fast or novena, do they get some mental mindset benefit out of that like they have belief now, like that they can do this? I think I'm not saying that grace doesn't matter, but I tend to think that for guys that believe, like, we can do a lot of things if we believe it or train our mind to do it.
It's just like in Rocky IV, where he trained in the snow and he was lifting the rocks until he believed that he can beat, Ivan Drago, who was this bioengineered fighter.
Right.
And he did win in the end. He was like a piece of iron.
Yeah. I personally believe that, like in the non-podcast stuff, I'm doing coaching and mindset training for my own self. I've got professional and personal goals. And one of the things you do is you recite every single day, I will do this. By this date, I will have this. I will do this. Like, you say it every single day.
No kidding.
Because it's that important to your success. Not that I hope so or I want it to happen. It will happen. So
that's a good tip right there.
I
can see how that's effective.
Yeah. And so we would love to have those guys on. I've invited all these guys on, especially those that.
So you start every day like, I will not touch myself. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Well, I really need to start saying that starting at about 8 o'clock p.m. That's when the witching hour starts.
Or do you say, I will have sex today with my wife?
Oh,
you think that works? Yeah. I'm not sure it really works in that situation.
Say it around your wife. That
I'm sure.
I think it's much easier.
I'm sure they work out great for
subliminal messaging. You know how they say,
like the old movie theater.
You go to the theater, they flash the Coke and the popcorn real fast.
We need to design shirts where it's like the digital image of that, like, but you can only see it for like a second or something,
right.
and just wear it around your
My
wife.
husband is hot. My
Yeah.
husband is hot.
Tiny print. Oh, that's good.
Andy, see if you can put that together for us. See if we...
In the Uncharted Catholic Man logo, my husband is hot.
Yeah. Ooh. All right. We'll get working on that.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, that's the stuff that I wanted to cover. So
No, that's all good.
well, we're steaming along here. We're getting down to the episode 200. So episode 200 is going to be the big, hopefully, the big talk. We maybe do it live. I don't know, but we're gonna hammer the other axe issue because I think that is the question, the question for us as Catholics. So stay tuned for that. If you have feedback, send us messages. You can email us now. I have an email account that I'm okay announcing and getting spam to, but it's unchartedcatholicman@gmail.com. So you can always send a message there. Don't if there's something in there that you want only me or Jonah to see, just put Jonah's eyes only or confidential. Otherwise, I have a Andy's helping us with that. Or go over to Twitter. I have a pinned tweet basically asking that. So I'm gonna have that up there until episode 200. But yeah, it's been fun.
That's been fun.
Yeah. So pray for us.
Yep. Pray, trust in God's mercy.
Go to confession.
Mm-hmm. Go to mass.
Amen.
Yep, and you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. So, all right.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Thank you, Jonah. And until next time, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good one.